when people complain about like you can't say what you want, that's a cop out. You can say what you want. It's free speech. The problem is you're just not free from consequence.
Yeah.
You could say whatever you want, but you can't force people to agree with your thoughts.
Right. And welcome back to another episode of Keeping It a Bean. Keeping It a Bean is a podcast that brings together culture and commentary all over a cup of coffee, but y'all already know what the game is. It's late at night, so niggas is drinking tea. But if you are new here, my name is Marquise Davon. Keith, don't ever call me Mark in your life. I don't do that. I don't play them games. Please don't do it. No. Mark was on the last episode. Mark is not here now. Had me over it. But if you are returning, you already know the vibes. Hello to niggas and niggas only. Welcome back to the show. I'm so happy to see y'all again. If you want to support this here podcast, you can do so in one of two ways. You can do so monetarily. So you can go to patreon.com/Marquise Davon. That's MarquiseDavon. There you can invest as little as $2 a month, which is $24 a year. There you can get exclusive drops as well as more lifestyle content that I'm going to start making in 2025. It's going to be a new venture. I'm going to push myself a little bit more creatively to start documenting my process a little bit more, which is super exciting, especially as the coffee brand is going to be launching and whatnot. But not only just that, you can get discounts on merch and also events that I will be throwing in 2025 as well. So I'll be doing a live series called Spill the Beans every other month in 2025. That'll be a live opportunity to get a fireside chat, but also to take away tangible skills. And that could be anything from how to develop a marketing plan or a business plan, or how do I maximize public relations and all that good stuff. But we'll bring in actual experts so you can leave with something tangible and a new skill you can put into practice that same night or the day after. If you like me, I need a night to process, so give me the day after and I get everything into action. But that's a cool way to also invest in me monetarily, because then you'll be able to do so and return on some skills, botch that a little bit, but we out here. We're going to make it. Other than that, I understand economic anxiety. People are a little broke in our year in Lord 2025. So if you want to support me non-monetarily, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. That is still the most powerful form of marketing. And if you want to support podcasters, please make sure, if you're watching these two lovely faces right now, that means you're watching on YouTube. Hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell right now. Take the time to do it. But if I'm your favorite Monday morning drive and your commute to work, please make sure that you leave a rate and review on the podcast. That allows us to show up in the algorithm a lot more. And if you enjoy listening to me, it might say, oh, you might listen to Anthony Moore as well on his podcast, all that and more. Okay. No, I lied.
We want more.
We want more.
Yeah.
His name on Instagram is all that more.
Yeah,
I got it.
I appreciate you catching it.
Okay, yeah. I was like, hold on. I said, wait. I said I was here. Okay. But in reality, that's a great way to show up on the algorithm a lot more, and also suggested podcasts that you might want to listen to as well. And so please make sure that you're supporting podcasters in that way. Other than that, that's all of my stuff for today. We're going to get into a really great conversation. I am so excited for today. And this wonderful, wonderful guest. He is a comedian, commentator, actor, all-around dope dude. My boy Lorenzo speaks so highly of you as well.
Okay.
Yeah. That's my guy.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it was really exciting because I got to introduce to your work when I was in college. And I was out in Central PA as a PWI. And you out here talking about barbers. It's a signature joke, yo. Yeah. But I remember seeing that and just like, oh, there's finally a breath of fresh air in this space. Mm-hmm. And it's so nice to see other comedians show up. And it made me a lot more curious around like, all right, if there's an Anthony, there's more people out here. I got to meet Alan through Anthony's work. And then from there, just like expanding my palette in terms of like comedians and whatnot. So you were really like a gateway for me in terms of like expanding my comedy palette outside of, what they deem as the kings of comedy.
Damn, I appreciate that. I appreciate that because this generation does need newer black faces. Yeah. Because it's like all we've known or all that like the media shows us is the same old faces from, I mean, it's like, you do want to give reverence to the legends, but it's like we so much more than just being stuck in the 90s. Right. And I think that to me is what I think was really dope when I was first introduced to your work. Because I believe I went out of my way because I believe you did a stand-up
back in Reading, PA. At the
that bowling
the bowling alley and that's where I met you for the first time. It's like
comedians will perform anywhere,
truly and honestly, and it was my hometown. I was just like, nah, dog, I saw him on Twitter, I gotta see him in real life. And I was like, from that point on, I was sitting there because I met you and Alan Massenberg that day. And from there, I've just been like fans, because I'm just like, there's one thing to like laugh online, but to like legitimately still be able to hear that and still just be like, nah, this nigga really funny for real. There's a talent and there's a science of comedy, and I think it's the coolest shit in the world. And so, no, I just want to give you your flowers too, because like I appreciated the world that you were able to open me up to that I didn't. Now, I know I never expressed to you, but like I appreciate the work that you do.
Appreciate that. That definitely means a lot.
Mm-hmm. But I say all that to say, welcome to the show.
No. Thanks for having me, man. I've been looking forward to this for a while because, I mean, I've been seeing the great work you've been doing over time. So, yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Dog, and before we fully get started, I can tell you all the things that I appreciate about this, man, but who are you?
Who am I? So, originally from West Philly. I'm a comedian. I've been doing comedy for, I want to say, it's been 13 years I've been doing comedy. But like, I got into comedy when I was in school, but even before, outside of comedy, I worked in schools as a paraprofessional. So a lot of people don't know that.
That's how I started.
I had my degree. I graduated from St. Joe's University.
Yeah.
And even outside of that, I've done some work down here with the Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability Services.
Dog, what?
Yeah. I know, like, I know.
It's like, all right, now I have questions.
I know that's like, and that is something that I kind of wanted to showcase too with my podcast, to show that like I am more than just somebody that's funny.
Yeah.
Because people always think of like just the funny aspect, where it's like, no, I have this whole nother side that people don't know about. Like, people don't know about my work in the mental health and behavioral health field.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Dog, and I think that to me, I love how multifaceted you are as well, because I'm also just a fan of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love how you and your co-host are able to like talk to each other, but you do it in a way that like your commentary is actually very pointed. Yeah. And I'd be like, oh, did you hear what the fuck he just said? But that really be me, because I think there's so much, like, there's an art in just being a comedian in itself, but there's also like the intellectual part of being a comedian that I think showcases even more when you're not always trying to make a punchline, but you're like, no, my thoughts actually align to some of the stuff that I'm also thinking about, which I think is so dope. So like, the more I got to hear you talk, I said, oh, this nigga about some shit. And to me, I think it's so dope though, because it showcases like your humanity a lot more, but it also showcases your expansiveness as a person, because you are a thinker.
Yeah, and it's funny because, in my family, I'm honestly the quiet one.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of older cousins. That, uncles that, even like my dad, I think my dad is just so funny. So I always love to listen to their stories.
Yeah.
So around them, like, I'm usually the one that's like more reserved. Mm-hmm. And I tend to open up more around like my circle, but my family, even from the podcast, like my mom, she listens. She's just learning stuff about me. Like, so that's what's cool. Like, I have so many people that have been around me all my life that are getting to see a whole nother side of me with that.
Which is so dope. And I relate to that piece a lot more too. Like,
People in my family, they be like, yo, I didn't even really hear you talk since last year. Like, I'm like, that's crazy.
Insanity. Maybe you just weren't listening. Okay. But I think that's interesting though, because even like when I first started my podcast 8 years ago, that's when my mom was just like, I did not know this stuff about you, Marquise. Right. He like, oh shit, I hope you ain't listening to everything. I said, remembering me different, Mom. Right. Like, but it opens so many people up to like a different aspect of you, because I think so often, especially with family, like there's an expectation of who we've been.
Right.
And so when we go back, they're kind of just like, oh, this is who you are. But like, it's also those moments that you begin to change and you begin to express those changes as well. And so like, we're going to take it back and then we'll get into like more of like the other stuff that you do.
Okay.
But you talked around being a lot more quiet. have you always been a quiet kid? And if so, like, how did you get into that world of comedy?
Yeah, I've always been like, just more so like naturally. Yeah, I'm a naturally shy person.
Yeah.
And I know that catches people off guard because I go on stage, but I feel like once I step on stage, I'm in a whole nother world. Whereas like now this is my time to talk and no one else's.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that protection of being on stage. I say what kind of opened me up to it, like, you know, I've always been like really opinionated. So it's like I can't help it. For some reason, it's like even certain things I might see, I know it might be better for me to stay quiet on it. I know this might affect how certain people might view me, as far as like even, you know, with the election just happening, right? I know if I speak out and say that how I feel about Trump or something like that, I know I might lose my white fan base, like, or some of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like I rather it's more fulfilling for me to give you my authentic self.
Yeah.
And then to just like hide it and to try to appeal to a bigger audience. I feel like I'm cheating myself.
Yeah, and I feel that on so many levels, because there are like two things that I really want to get into that you were kind of talking about, because I'll comment on this. I relate heavily to getting on stage and feeling like you can finally say what you wanted to say.
Right.
Like for me, I'm a theater kid, so started out in basketball, played my cello, danced, but when I got into theater, that's the first time I actually found my voice. And I was just like, oh, and I'm a middle child, so like this also plays a little bit of a role. But that was the first time I felt like, oh, people are actually seeing me for like what I love to do.
Right.
And theater was like a newer passion for me. And so from 8th grade on, I'm just like, I feel different on stage. Like people are able to witness me, and there's an expectation like, yeah, Marquise has always been quiet and smart. But when my extroversion began to become a thing and I became a little bit more prominent of just like, oh no, I'm going to actually speak and like show off my personality. It wasn't until doing theater for probably 2-3 years that I was able to kind of step in and be comfortable taking space when I wasn't on a stage. So do you feel like part of comedy has allowed you to become a little bit more extroverted, or at least be more comfortable taking up space?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Comedy has helped me with my voice just in so many other aspects of my life, whether it be, you know, shit, even little things. Even like, you know, men sometimes we don't even like speaking up when somebody mess up our food at a restaurant.
No, it's fine. Don't complain. They be like, no, my shit's fucked up.
Right, yeah. So yeah, comedy has helped me out, and like with stuff like that, I could honestly, I remember one key thing, like, and this was after this was like one of the things that was like really life changing for me, and it might seem small to the person. It was this professor, Dr. Show, when I was in college, and at this point I'm already doing comedy for a little bit, but I was still, it's weird, I was still like, when I was sending emails to professors and stuff, I would still have like a friend or a woman, like, or like my girl at the time, to like send the email for me, because, you know, like, I guess it's like coming from where we come from, our voices are always like silenced a little bit.
Yeah.
So I wasn't as confident in my words.
Right.
And I remember asking this professor, I was like, cause like we had a close enough relationship where I could just go in her office, and I asked like, hey, do you think this is cool? And she was like, you're a great speaker. Like, you should believe in your words. And that just meant everything to me.
Yeah.
And that like just changed my whole outlook moving forward.
What was it about what she said that like changed your outlook? Did you feel like you didn't have permission to do that?
Yeah, it made me think. I'm like, damn, I am conveying it. If I'm conveying it on stage, then I need to apply that the same person that I am on stage. I want to be that in every aspect of my life, because I know when I am on stage, I know like I'm coming from a pure place.
Yeah.
Like I'm not trying to hurt anybody. I'm not being malicious. I'm just getting my point across in the best way.
Yeah.
And, you know, some things I might say people might agree with, some people might disagree with it, but as long as I can rationalize it, I think then it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. What you about to say something?
No, yeah. I wasn't necessarily going to say anything, but I wanted to. What was it about? Like, does she look at you and makes you feel like? Does she make you feel strong or does she make you feel like stupid? No, she thinking about.
No, she made me feel strong because it was like, it was something so simple, but it was so true that I just never heard before. Yeah, like, it's really rare. Like, I just never heard a teacher like just say it so straightforward. Yeah, like, you are a great speaker. Believe in your words, and just something as little as like that small affirmation could mean so much. Yeah.
Dog, that's I think because I don't think people realize, like, that's why I had to become even more mindful. Like, I think teaching is such a scary job because you can make or break a kid, honestly, like, at any point in time.
Honestly,
and so like those kind of words like mean so much, and we don't realize like the stuff we say in passing, the small things that we might know, but like that's the first time for a kid to experience something like that. It's so crucial. So I appreciate you really naming that story, because I think it also leans into like the other part of my question that I had was just like, you even talk about no longer willing to like negotiate your authenticity to preserve a larger audience. Right. Like that's such a specific choice, because I understand. I was saying on a episode of last week, I was like, I know I overcompensate in being able to do my job extremely well to be as audacious as I want to be in the workplace. But that's because like I want to be like, no, if I'm going to give you my all, I get to also be as authentic as possible. Right. And I don't want to have to negotiate having to be Mr. Richards in one space, Keith in another space, Marquise in another space. Like, no, this should all be able to exist in one spot. Right. But I tell myself, we don't always have the privilege of doing that unless we are good at what we do. Yeah. And even as like a creator, like this past year, just getting more opportunities to talk a little bit more around like political and social issues, a lot of people were right away just like, are you sure? Like, you got a pretty expansive. I said the majority of my audience is Black, first and foremost. And if they're being a guest into the space that I curated, I'm like, this is this one space that I don't have to compromise any aspect of self. And so if you're coming into my world, nah, nigga, it's good morning, niggas. Like that's what you're gonna get every time. You feel me?
Exactly. Because when we changed my whole perception with that too is, you know, comedy made me grow up quick. I started comedy when I was 18. Yeah. So it made me mature really fast because I was always the youngest person around. Even still, a lot of nights, being 32, you know, comedy is a grown man's, a grown person's business. Whereas, like, you know, all the successful people might have been doing this 20 years or so. Right. So it made me grow up quick. But I would hold back opinions for the sake of not wanting to rub certain people the wrong way. Yeah. Even, like, whether it be comedy club bookers, agents, stuff like that. And then I went through a good phase where, you know, I wasn't booking anything. And then I'm like, I might as well speak my mind because shit, being silent isn't helping me. Yeah. So that's what like really changed things too. It's like, if you don't want to, if you sit silent, it's like they not going to like you anyway. So just be you.
And when was that moment? Do you have a particular moment that it was just like?
I say, shit, honestly, probably during the pandemic. Yeah. During the pandemic, that summer. That's when, like, you know, the whole tensions and, matter of fact, a little bit before then, around when everybody started trying to go against cancel culture. So I guess it would be like 2016. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. When the shift started to change.
Yeah. So I'm telling you, Trump's first presidency.
Right. Yeah.
That bitch changed everything. But I think that's also very real though, because I'm just like, there's almost like this, like, yes, there's political correctness, but almost like this moral purity that everybody believes that should be had in some spaces. And I'm just like, I feel like we're trying to overcorrect for somebody who like had no morals and ethics from anything to begin with. But also, I think that's also where the role of comedy, it felt like the role of comedy, but also the culture around comedy began to shift as well. Because you have somebody who's supposed to represent the greatest nation in the world, quote unquote, having no decency, right? And so what happens when that person no longer has decency? So what does that mean for the people who are supposed to make jokes, but in the idea of making jokes, it also subverts some stuff too, right? Like I think people forget, like, the original role of comedy was to subvert the people in power, right? But I think as people began to become a little bit more like, he's having real world ramifications on people's conditions because of, like, him being the president of the United States. What does this mean for, like, those of us that don't seriously engage with comedy in that way either? So do you also feel like you were able to, like, lean into this? Because I think about you and I'm like, you are somebody who is able to, like, lean in, but it's never to the point of just like, well, I feel like I can't say anything that I really want to say, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. You're actually a person who is just like, no, like, these things are wrong, and I can still make these jokes. Right. So, like, how'd you find that balance?
As I say, it's all about intent. Yeah. Because even, you know, some people get mad at, like, certain jokes, like, about, like, saying, like, this is a bad joke, and it's like, you know, bad jokes and good jokes, they all come from the same mind. Yeah. So it's just about, you know, and sometimes a joke might not hit, but it's just about, like, your intentions. I try not to punch down. I try to bring everybody into a joke. What else? I mean, and then, like, when people complain about, like, you can't say what you want, that's a cop out. You can say what you want. It's free speech. The problem is you're just not free from consequence. Yeah. You could say whatever you want, but you can't force people to agree with your thoughts. Right. Like, because, I mean, it's times I've heard stuff that I've been offended, but, you know, I could choose to engage with that, or, you know, I know that's not for me. Right. So, yeah, it's saying you can't say what you want, it's just a cop-out. Yeah.
What do you think is the ultimate goal of comedy?
I think the ultimate goal is to make people laugh, to make people think. I think.
But why?
Well,
like, why is it to make people laugh? Like, what's the point of making people laugh? Is it to make them? Well, I don't want to put my opinion on, but, like, why make them laugh? I guess is what I want to ask you.
To make people feel good, to make people feel good about things that, even if it's wrong, you still have some hope to push on. Cause, like, you know, it's a bunch of things. Like, shit, I just looked at this list where it was like the top 15 comedians to look out for 2025. It was one black person on the list, right? Snap. One black person on the list, right? And I'm like, God damn, like, white people, y'all had a hell of a year, right? And it's like, great joke, right? And it's like, I have to, like, joke about it and think about it like that, in that mindset, because it's like, if I don't, I'm gonna just be riled up and angry at all times. So it's like, sometimes the humor is to make people not forget about, like, the troubles and, like, the wrongs, but at the same time just look at it a little lighter and just give them a glimpse of, like, happiness and hope at a bad situation.
That's really dope. I love that answer, because it's something. Shout out to Anna Andy. She was my theater professor, and she was just like, dramatic acting is one thing. Like, you can do a drama and there's a catharsis and there's a thing behind it, but, like, to do comedy and, like, to do comedy well, you can get people to be like, hold on. They could be like, haha, oh. Right. Hold on. Right. And there's a spot where you think, and I remember doing my first comedic play, and it was like this whole existentialist. I was playing a pot-headed Buddhist. Dog sees God. It was like what happens after the creator of Charlie Brown passes away and all of the characters don't have a direction to go. But it was, like, interesting because there was always, like, these moments of spaces where you're like, oh, this is funny. But I had, like, this one line that people always remember is just like, haha, I smoked my blanket. And people are just like, is Linus okay? Like, what's going on with him? So people are like, haha, and they're just like, hold on. I don't know about your character, what's going on here, but it was a cool way to, like, lean into, like, the idea around mental health and how people were coping with loss. And so it's a whole play about grief, but it's all comedy. Right. And so I'm just like, I think people don't always realize, like, when you are able to do that punchline, when you're able to do the callback, when you're able to like bring this thing all together, there is a role that comedy continuously plays, because it's also just like almost when niggas all see each other on the street and just like, you saw that bullshit too? Right. Like we all saw this. Yeah. And we're going to make light of it, but it gives people something to talk about after. Right. And so do you think like you're able to like have that kind of impact on people, or is that like your ultimate goal?
No, for sure. Yeah. Like people don't understand, and I feel like I don't want to speak about myself in this way, but I feel like I don't get the justice that like people really don't understand.
That's okay. You don't gotta say it. I can say it for you. Like, no, I can say it for you.
Like, and it's like people really don't understand how much I put into my pen, and they might not get it just because of how I sound when it comes out. Yeah. Because of like I've performed at clubs, and you know the booker tell me like, you know, you're funny, but your Philly accent is kind of strong. Where it's like, I'm not up here talking about roaches and baby moms. I'm up here. Yeah.
What you talking about?
Right, yeah. So, no, I take my pen very serious, and, you know they say the public speaking is the number one fear. So it's like, if you are comfortable with speaking in front of a mic, like, I understand that it's a gift that, like, you should really take serious. It's like, it's this... I know this is real random, but like my dad, he was a DJ, and he always like the music he plays is funny how it affected me so much. But it's this one Farside song called "Something That Means Something," and that shit is like, it's so simple, but it's real. It's like that's how I feel. I gotta say something that actually means something. Yeah. Every time I go on the mic.
Yep. Yeah. No, and I love that because there's also intention behind it.
Right.
Like I think that's the other piece that I always admired, was like the intention that you put behind your craft. And that's something, like me personally, I'm just like, I appreciate like a student of the stuff that they do. I appreciate a person who is like, I want to do this exceptionally well. Like no matter what, if you are passionate about that thing and you do it well, I have nothing but like respect for it. Right. And so I think like, especially like hearing you talk a little bit more, and the ways in which like the simplest things, it feels like, have been able to give you permission, but you just needed to hear it a lot of the time, is like what caused you to excel a lot. So I'm like hearing from your teacher, hearing from the song, there's so many like small nuances in the world, and you're just like, yeah, dog, that makes sense. That's all I needed.
Right.
That is sweet though.
And because of that, like, you know, is open, because of so many different experiences, is made me feel more comfortable at just tapping into myself, that like, you know, it helps me like just on a daily living, but and it also intertwines with the career.
Yeah. And speaking about your career even more, you're on TV.
Yeah.
How was like that? He's like, I don't brag. Yeah, it's fine. It's whatever. He said, oh yeah, you're right.
Right.
But what was that opportunity like? Because that's also like a different level of visibility as you begin to enter in different spaces. Did you feel comfortable on camera at that point in time? Because one thing about the stage, and then you're just like, oh, a camera's there. What do I do next?
It's funny. So my first time being on TV, I did this show with Kevin Hart of the City. That was like when my barber joke was on. Yep. Right? And we taped that at, the place is closed now. We taped that at Warm Daddy's.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
right, yeah.
Great New Orleans cuisine.
Yeah.
Fire.
Yeah, we taped that at Worm Daddy's, and you know, so it was two parts of the episode. First, we had a conversation at it was like me, Kevin Hart, and two other comedians that were on the show. We had a conversation just about like the Philly comedy scene, and then later that night we did the show at Worm Daddy's. I was just worried about. I was more so nervous about the conversation part. Yeah. I knew I was going to do fine on stage. Yeah. I didn't know how it was going to come off, like talking, because like I said, this is still like me and my shy, like worried about like, am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I going to come off corny, or am I going to come off too quiet? It's just me overthinking that. So I was more so overthinking the actual talking part. I wasn't worried about the stage at all.
Niggas got a podcast.
I know, right? That's hilarious.
Like, that's hilarious. Right. Like what?
Right.
That's dope though.
Yeah, so that was my first time on TV. But and then like, you know, I've been on TV a few other times. Like I was on Netflix this past year.
Yep.
on this show Tires, starring Shane Gillis, and I was on that. But with these things, like every time I get an accomplishment, I just keep my head down and just keep working, just try to push forward to the next thing.
But do you sell it? Because
I know, and that's what I should do. Comedy is so the role of entertainment will have you so jaded that you forget to celebrate your wins.
Yeah. That's why I was asking, like, you got to, like, you're on Netflix, you're on the show Tires, and you have these cool moments. And so I was like, have you been able to sit down with that piece and just be like, dog, I'm on a show. Like,
right. Yeah.
And I only ask you because I recently, like, this past weekend, this is the first time in a long time I've been able to sit down with a win and just like really just like take time to process. And so like I was explaining to people, I'm just like, I did not give myself time to like appreciate graduating from high school, graduating, being the only one in my family to graduate from college, and so on and so forth. And I'm just like, I had to learn to sit my ass down and just be like, yo, Keith, you did some cool shit.
Right. I'm not even gonna lie. So I have a dog, and one of my favorite things to do is just go on walks with my dog. And it's funny because like sometimes I'll think about comedy, like just like of how far I came, and then like my goals moving forward, and it's like it'll make me emotional to the point of tearing up, because it's like because I haven't enjoyed those wins, like in the moment when they happen. But then it's like when you're alone by yourself, that's when all your thoughts start to come to you. Mm-hmm. So I say that's one thing also like traveling has helped me with, like being alone, being comfortable with being alone with my thoughts.
Yeah. That is. I love that because it takes so much time.
Can I ask you a question about your tone and like the monotoneness of your voice? Like I haven't seen much of your work.
No. I'm glad you asked that. Like that's a great question.
Yeah, because I see it like a lot where it's like Kevin Hart or like other comedians where they're like really expressive and really outgoing, but we're starting to see like, I don't know, a shift, especially like I say in music and stuff like that. We're allowing people to come in and be a little more monotone. I don't know if you heard of the rapper named V's, but his voice is super monotone, and sometimes you miss out the bars. So I just wonder like, from being in comedy, has there been anybody who's saying like, hey, could you be more expressive, or is it like your art isn't taken as serious because they don't catch certain things that you say because of your tone?
No, that is a great question, because that was one of the things that like I realized in my first year or two. I remember, cause coming up, I didn't know like the more mainstream side of comedy. I like the white comics. I didn't know that. I grew up on Def Comedy Jam and Comic View. Yeah. So I thought I had to be this like super animated, yelling, just like hype comic. And even when I watch videos, I mean now from when I first started, I'm a totally different comedian. Yeah. Like just like my whole style was that. And then it just didn't feel comfortable. Like I felt like I was it felt like I would just tire out, because it was just like I could only keep up that facade for so long. I might get away with it for like a 4 or 5 minute set, but then as I'm doing longer sets, it's like I'm gonna naturally slip back into what I really am. Yeah. So then I remember like I was thinking like, is there any comedians that aren't animated in that way? And one of the ones that I watched was like Dion Cole.
Do you enjoy reading? Do you enjoy like audiobooks? Do you enjoy movies or like any of that?
Do I enjoy? I honestly I need to get back into reading. I used to read a lot more frequently. As far as like movies, I like documentaries.
Yeah, because I was asking because I want to know, because Marquise was talking about storytelling. Mm. Where do you find like your way of, where'd you find your inspiration for storytelling? Like, was it from movies? Was it from just living life? Was it from like, I don't know, just like video games? Like where'd you find where do you find your inspiration to tell your stories and how to tell the stories?
Okay, it's a lot of different people. You know, like listen to my dad. So my dad's side of the family is from Jamaica. Mm-hmm. So like my dad and my older cousins, they just so animated with everything, and they just exaggerate like just the smallest thing.
Yeah.
And so the humor in that. But then, you know, also like watching the stuff that my mom and dad grew up on. Like I would watch I didn't really watch like Martin and Fresh Prince and stuff until like maybe high school. I was watching when my dad was watching like Sanford and Son or the Jeffersons and things like that. And then I also went through a period of when like once my parents split, going to like staying with my dad and not having cable, and that forced me to watch a lot of Everybody Loves Raymond and King of Queens. So so like I had so many different things that kind of like shaped and molded my mind of comedy.
That's really, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So from the different types of comedians, from white or black or whomever, you kind of got your way of telling stories, you're saying, from being forced to watch things that you necessarily wouldn't have watched yourself.
Right, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Definitely being forced like to watch stuff that I wouldn't have watched on my own, or music. Like my dad, he was a DJ, but like he had so many crates of records at the house. So it was like, it's funny because even now, you know, I might listen to some Future or like some Migos, but then I catch myself slipping, listening to it like the most obscure stuff from the 70s. Like it was funny, like legit when I came to Philly, my mom picked me up from 30th Street and she was in a car listening to this group from this, I don't know if y'all familiar, but this group Switch. And Switch, I'm sure y'all heard this. Y'all definitely heard Switch before, but y'all wouldn't. It's not something like commonly like off the hand. But like she was listening to the song, and at the same time it was the same song. Like it wasn't the same song. It was a song from the same album that I was listening to too.
Oh, that's funny.
It was the craziest shit because it was like just so random.
Yeah, it's like, where'd you get this from?
Right, yeah. Where'd that ballad come from? Right, yeah. It was just so random that like me and my mom, we both listened to like B-sides from this group
from the
hilarious. 70s. Yeah, so it was like that definitely played a lot. That definitely played the big part on me too, and then, you know, I do have like the usual guys influence me, like Chappelle, Chris Rock. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those.
Good stuff, dog. Before we get to the Keeping It a Bean segment, my final question for you is like, what do you hope people get from your comedy?
And what do I hope? I hope people leave with a sense of feeling like they know something about me. Mm-hmm. So that's the biggest thing, and I think that's why I connect with people so much, because I let people into really who I am. Yeah. So like when people know me, I mean like when people watch me after a set, they'll know like, okay, he graduated from college, he has a dog, he used to catch people steal packages, or yeah, like I let people in. I let people into like what's really going in my life. I might be dealing with me and my girl might be fighting. I might I let people in. Like I give them so much honesty when I'm on stage, and that's what I was gonna say about my barber joke. Like, you know, I'm envious of like comedians that can make up stories, because like my barber joke, that was one of the first jokes that let me know like, damn, I can take something from my life, because that's a true story. Yeah. My cousin was my barber, and then he got locked up, so I started legit going to somebody else, and then when he came home, I would go back and forth getting shape-ups between the both of them. Because originally, like, the way I was doing the joke, I was saying, like, you know, men are more faithful to their barbers than they are in relationships. Yeah. But I'm like, that's such a regular premise that, like, anybody could think of. I'm like, I need to make this unique to me, and then I gave people my actual experience with my barber at the time. Yeah,
that's dope. I appreciate you for that.
Yeah.
One more question though, like, you said that you was also a shy kid, but not just a quiet kid. Like, when you're on stage and stuff like that, how do you make sure that, I mean, obviously it's probably just over time you developed it, but how do you, like, not fumble and trip over your words?
Oh, it's more so repetition. I do write a good amount. I mean, sometimes I do fumble over my words, just because sometimes it's like my mind is moving so fast. I have a habit of wanting to say a lot more than I can at one time.
Yeah.
So where it's like, right, where it's just so many thoughts racing. So no, I definitely do fumble over my words a good amount too. But you know, it happens. It happens. I mean, like, you gotta go through that process with anything, not even just comedy, like with anything. Is like, you gotta, like, just like with podcasting, you gotta figure this out. Like, you gotta go through that bombing process of, like, being bad at something. Is like, that's the only way to get good at it and master it.
You think I can do that monologue at the beginning for that long?
Right,
every single week?
I don't know. That's crazy.
The fuck? No.
I thought I first came in here, I thought you was going to have a script or something. I thought you had it planned out, what you was going to say, the questions and everything. No, he just started talking.
Yeah.
It's the gift of gab. Okay? Professional yapper. Shout out to us. Dog, I want to say thank you, but before we get out of here, this is our favorite section. Normally do it at the beginning, but we really just got into the conversation right away.
Okay.
This is the Keeping It a Bean segment. So Keeping It a Bean is your biggest hot take. So it could be keeping 100 about anything, but personal, political, pop culture, whatever you feel like getting off your chest. What is that thing?
Damn. That's okay. I guess we can stay in lines of comedy, and since we briefly kind of talked about it, people have to, especially like our people, black people have to stop with this whole myth of, like, you know, they try to conform, like, when it comes to comedians. If you want to get successful, you got to put on a dress, or, you know, you selling out,
right?
Things like that. I think that needs to end.
Yeah.
That definitely needs to end.
Half. I mean, like, what in a conspiracy theory?
I hate that whole myth. They put black men in dresses, because, I mean, we're the only ones that fight that.
Yeah.
Nobody, you don't hear white people talking about Robin Williams playing Mrs. Doubtfire.
Not at all.
You don't hear white people complaining about Adam Sandler being Jack and Jill.
Not at all.
Like, it's just us. And I feel like when people use those, like, when people throw that out there, oh, this person must have did this, it's because that person is justifying them not getting an opportunity.
Dog.
I'm so talented and I didn't get it, and this person got it, so they had to do something that I wasn't willing to do.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, no, it just wasn't meant for you.
That's quite literally that.
Yeah.
I was just having this conversation, because I'm like, dog, you cannot say every successful black person that has made it is part of the Illuminati.
Right.
I said, because there is something to say about
Right.
the ways in which, like, black folks who get hyper visibility and lots of success, they're just like, well, what did you have to do? What did you have to give up in order to get this?
Right.
Right. And I think it's interesting, because I feel like black men tend to get emasculated in that kind of space. They're just like, nah, you did some gay shit. And I say, you think every gay person is successful? Because we're not. We're not.
And on the flip side, some of these niggas just want to put on dresses.
Quite literally.
It's like that
let
too.
Niggas be in dresses.
Some just want to do it, but because of the environment and the people that they're around, their family and their friends, or, like, you know, the circumstances that they grew up in, they might not feel comfortable. So the only way I can do this comfortably is in my art form.
Quite literally, which is why, like, Young Thug could have did it, but also we made fun of a Jaden Smith for doing it, right? Like, there's always, like, these different people where you're just like, I think oftentimes and this is probably just my hot take, if I'm keeping it a bean, jealousy and envy is just a manifestation of whatchamacallit, words. Jealousy is an expression of an unmet need.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, you're trying to communicate something here. Your only way of communicating it is through irritation or by like cutting somebody else down or trying to justify how they got something that you don't. But in reality, what need hasn't been met for you? Right. Why does this bother you? And how can you attain that? Is it through, do you need somebody to speak life into you? Do you need a hug? Like, or is this something that you want, but you just don't know how to get there? So instead of being so arrogant to say they have done something, actually take time to actually question and ask and be curious around like how this person got to that journey. Because 9 times out of 10, a lot of people who make it, especially don't be black and make it, want to give back. Exactly. And so I just always think about it. I think it's interesting to hear like how we justify other people's success, but also how jealousy kind of manifests itself. So yeah, that's my hot take.
Damn, that's real, because a lot of that does come from that person having their own insecurities.
Yeah, it normally comes from a place of lack. Yeah. And I think that's the piece that I don't think enough of us get to, because I was thinking about it, especially like working with kids. Kids don't know how to always articulate the things that they want, but they will do things to signal what they need. And so like I had a kid who just came to my classroom all the time, but in reality, he's just like, no, you're legitimately just my safe person. And so like when I'm feeling anxious, like you center me. But he's obviously not saying that. Like
he might be lashing out or something like that. I had that happen. So I work with kids. I was working at a few different schools, and I left like around the pandemic, and it was funny because the children that would give me a hard way to go, these were the kids that were like finding me on TikTok and on my YouTube page saying, "Hey, Mr. Anthony, remember me?" And it's funny because it's like when I was actually around them, it was like they would just give me the hardest times. They would tell me how much they don't like me and stuff like that, and then they reaching out because they missed having somebody there. Yep. Yeah.
It's so interesting, but I think teaching has taught me how to like work and develop patience with adults in such a now again, I'm still a Virgo, so I'm in perpetual state of irritation with half of you, but what you don't know is I'm always irritated. But in reality, like working with kids has actually allowed me to understand adults, because we are quite literally just like kids who pay bills. When I think about it, real. But it taught me to really just be patient a lot more, and just like most lashing out, I'm just like, I don't even take some of this shit personal anymore. I'm just like in a space now, I'm just like, nah, dog, I don't know what's going on in your world, but the most it happens 7.5 times out of 10. Asking somebody like what happened to you, not what's wrong with you, but like asking them what happened to you.
That is, that language right there is so important. Dog. People don't understand the big difference of that, of like what, because most of us, we've all been through something. It could be the smallest thing, whether that be, I mean, we've all experienced some type of loss in life. So yeah, that question of what happened to you, instead of making it think like, damn, am I a problem? Yeah. When you hear what's wrong with you, you internalize that in a whole different way.
Yeah. And I think that piece is like so different, but it disarms so many people, because then you are also asking like, all right, and now what do you need in this moment? Cool. You need a walk. And sometimes people don't know, but I'm like, you need a walk? You need to listen to music? Do you need to call somebody? Do you need to hear a voice? Like, what is that thing that you need? And I had realized like, the more that we're able to model that for adults, the more we're able to model that for kids, I think we get to see, and I think the biggest thing is what I've been interrogating is like, what is community when we teach each other how to work through conflict resolution? And like, I think those are some of the cool, like the easiest ways to do it, but I think so many of us are so sometimes stuck in our ways, or just don't know the language to use right away to like get to that point. So yeah, that was just like a musing that I was having like throughout this week, so you just caught all of that. But dog, honestly and truly, thank you for like this conversation. Thank you for coming through. And honestly, thank you for just lending your voice to the world, because I think it's so important and necessary. What you do with the podcast, what you do with comedy, what you do with storytelling. It's inspired me a lot more than you realize, but seeing you 7-8 years ago on that stage, it's just like, dog, a whole nother world. And so I appreciate you, yo.
No, thank you, man.